Well, welcome. Terrell Adams here, one of the co-founders of the Alliance here with UW hockey alum Dean Barnes. How you doing, Dean?
Oh, fine, Darrell. Nice to see you.
You as well. Really appreciate your time. Looking forward to chatting with you. Obviously, we spoke a couple of days ago, kind of broke the ice on what we're looking to do with this second annual celebration of Black excellence, and definitely looking forward to hearing your story and talk about, your path and what you've been doing recently. So I'll turn it over to you. Just tell us about your background.
Yeah, I grew up not too far from Waterloo, just an hour away. I grew up in Burlington, Ontario, and I've spent my entire life in Burlington. Have a lot of long-standing friendships. I didn't really move around that much. Stayed at the same school and went to high school there at Aldershot High School, and then following that, applied to a number of universities and selected University of Waterloo way back when.
Nice, nice, perfect. Now tell me this, originally where are your parents, your grandparents from? Like, tell me your background.
That's right. Yeah, my parents actually grew up, born in Jamaica, and
Nice.
spent some time in England. And the way immigration patterns were back then, many people from the Caribbean moved to England and then
Mhm.
had citizenship in Canada. So they
Right.
moved here, and then I was born here. So
Okay.
that's my background. Yeah,
Awesome. Do you get back to Jamaica much?
a few times. Yeah, a few times. A few relatives still there, so it's a nice option connection to still have. Yeah,
Yeah,
in
most
England
definitely.
as well too. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's one place I would love to go to is
Yeah.
crossing the Atlantic. I heard a lot of great things about England and been to Jamaica once in my life and definitely a place I want to go back to. Just different atmosphere, different lifestyle. But so what are you up to nowadays? Like, what do you do for a living?
Yeah, so now I'm a superintendent for the Halton District School Board, which is Oakville, Burlington, Milton, Halton Hills region. So I supervise a number of schools, and my portfolio is the student well-being portfolio. So
That's a
I was
very, very
formerly a high school principal.
Oh, awesome. So definitely helping tomorrow's youth. It's important that mental health aspect that you talked about, putting these people in good position to, address the concerns of what's happening in the real world. So do you like what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. All the roles in education I've loved doing. I have a little bit of a wider scope now on the influence, but incrementally through the years, I've always had a strong passion for education and coaching in previous years as well.
Yeah, they definitely go hand in hand. Being a football coach, I consider myself like a teacher because the amount of life lessons that we learn from sports and football and that atmosphere. So we also try to make sure the guys are taking those lessons that they're learning from football and applying them to the real world because you never know what could happen. It's important to make sure the guys understand how to handle themselves in certain situations. So tell me this, turning back the clock a little bit, what years were you at Waterloo and why did you choose Waterloo when you made that decision back in the day?
Yeah, I was at Waterloo a long time ago from 88 to 1993. And part of my decision making was that the program I applied to sport management sort of matched my academic interests. I was in a co-op program, which again matched my what I was looking to do because it gave me an opportunity to try out some things in the work world that I may have liked or not liked. And then I had an opportunity to play hockey for the varsity team. And one of the reasons I went to Waterloo was the opportunity to play for their hockey team. So those were some of the reasons behind why I chose Waterloo.
Nice. And tell me about your experience at Waterloo when you were there, if you can think back to those years ago. I know when I graduated, it still feels like yesterday being in this environment, always referring back to my experience at university and talking to kids about all the good highs and lows and friends you may make. So talk about your experience at Waterloo.
Yeah, very, really fond memories. Lots of strong relationships were forged with first my friends I met on residence in the first floor in North E, followed by connections with players on the hockey team, and as well some good friendships with classmates. So all those three groups, I still have some good bonds, still connect with today. And academically, the Waterloo prepared me for postgraduate work. I went on to do a Bachelor of Ed at University of Toronto, Master of Education at Queen's University, and a PhD in Education at Ontario Institute for Studies in Education at University of Toronto. So all those things were kind of, Waterloo was a stepping stone for me to be able to achieve success in other areas.
Nice. That's awesome. Let's speak specifically about the hockey team in general. With hockey being a predominantly white sport, talk about, some of the trials and tribulations you may have experienced at your time at Waterloo, or even before that, as you made your decision to play at a higher level of hockey, knowing that it's something that isn't necessarily, I don't want to say well received, but just the participation isn't what it could be from the perspective of Black people.
Yeah, you're right. My experiences are mostly positive for the most part throughout all the age groups I played. They definitely far outweigh the negative experiences in my personal situation. Um, when there were setbacks in this particular sport, because I was a multi-sport athlete, but the setbacks, if they were racially, my teammates and coaches always had my back.
Nice.
But that begs the question, though, like, why should someone have to have someone's back for racial repercussions? So I think some of the awareness that discussions we've been having in society recently, people, whether they are white or Black or other minorities, we're all sort of in this together. And I think we're recognizing that none of this should really happen. The things that people had to step up for, either as allies or people that were minorities, that shouldn't have to be the case. That these incidents shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. As we continue to learn more and become more aware and partner with our allies, at some point we hope that the work we're doing will have a positive influence on the next generation, the generation to follow, and all this history can be history versus continuation of what's happening. I'm sure you're aware of what happened on February 2nd with Amir Locke, another unfortunate event where a Black man was murdered in his own home by police, executing a no-knock warrant. I feel like we're back where we were 2 years ago with Breonna Taylor. And it's like this cycle has to stop at some point. We have to work together to make sure that it does stop.
Yes, agreed.
What advice would you give to prospective hockey players that identify as Black, Indigenous, or racialized?
I think the advice wouldn't change much from what I was sort of taught by either friends around me, my parents. I think looking for people that you can aspire to, that have values to guide them in being successfully academically and athletically. I know that I had heroes related to sports. I had some not related to sports. Dr. Martin Luther King was someone I read his book when I was in university and took a political science course and did some deep analysis into his movement and how his intentional actions led to the better society we are right now and better civil rights for people. I know we're not fully where we want to be, but I think his work still continues on. So I think pick some people that represents you. I liked Tony McKegney and Grant Fuhr growing up. When I played as a young person, those were two people I knew that were Black players that helped me feel that I could play the game as well and I could go as far as I could do. So, I mean, those are some pieces of advice I would give.
Awesome. Definitely got to have some role models, some people that look like you do to kind of aspire to be like them for sure. And then in addition to that, how would you have any thoughts or ideas on how we could increase, participation and representation amongst the Black athletes playing a sport like hockey?
Yeah, I think Canada being a country of immigrants over time, we've seen more visible minorities in our country, and I think the opportunities in some sports hasn't been representative to the current population. I started a girls hockey program at one of the schools I taught in Toronto in the mid 90s. There was no girls hockey, but what we did is we provide and remove barriers to ice time and equipment. And there were tournaments at York University. And, you fast forward now 10 or 20 years from now, there's probably nearly as many girls playing hockey as boys are close to it. So I think we have to look at ways to reduce barriers, reduce costs, make people feel more included. I think universities themselves can outreach to go to the communities to develop programs as opposed to the communities coming to them. look what's happened with basketball and soccer over the last decade or so. There's far there's a lot of basketball players who are now being recruited and being drafted in the top first rounds of the NBA. For soccer, we have not been successful at all on the world stage, but some grassroots programs, I think, have removed barriers and created opportunities for all athletes to participate. And I think one challenge nowadays is we unfortunately specialize too much in sports. And I think so the sports bodies may try to explore getting back to how things were before, where athletes were given time to excel in different sports, because there are pressures and limits that do impact on participation rates. Hockey can do things like exposure to road hockey, exposure to public skating. As I said, the costs are quite a bit nowadays for anyone, whether you're a person of color or not. And I think hockey has to look at ways of making it more affordable and accessible to anyone.
Yeah, for sure. Everything is subject to inflation at this point. Obviously COVID's had its effect on the economy and companies are trying to make up that money. But just talking to some of my peers that have kids that are playing hockey, they just talk about the expenses, how expensive the skates and the equipment and the ice time. It's like, there's got to be some way to subsidize the cost to help make it, accessible to the masses, right? Because right now it's almost like an elitist sport. If you can't afford to play it, then your kids don't have a chance.
Yeah.
We're trying to do some community outreach with our alliance group. We're starting with the Learn to Swim program at some point in this semester, and then we're going to follow that with a Learn to Skate program, specifically aimed at those who are Black, Indigenous, or racialized, to help give them opportunity and expose them to something they wouldn't normally do. So looking forward to getting that started, and just trying to find some government grants and some funding to be able to provide equipment, like you mentioned when you started your girls program, just because that stuff isn't just readily available.
And I know we're talking about hockey, but you made me think too as well. When I first started teaching in Toronto, I had been exposed to playing football in my community. When I went to Toronto, there was a lot of many newcomer Canadians, and football programs were not as prevalent in the high schools. And again, I think that was a bit of a miss. I think the organizations and the communities could have done more to expose students to the sport, whether it's flag football, whether it's concepts, and get parents involved in the experience. And I think that sort of leads to sometimes there's misperceptions about what the sport is about and what it entails.
Right.
And I think organizations and again, I think universities can probably lead the way in terms of some of the things they do in the summertime when it comes to camps that have costs as well. Perhaps there's ways of including more in those experiences and opportunities.
For sure. So talk to me about, this card collection. I read an interesting article about you with the card collection for the hockey players, and definitely want to learn more about it. What made you, what was kind of your motivation to get this started as you continue this amazing journey?
Yeah, well, I still play men's hockey, and when the pandemic started, I wasn't able to do that anymore. So people turned to different hobbies. People are doing board games, or what was it, baking bread and all things like that, right? So I had read some articles about the values of cards and the activity, and people were turning back to card collecting. And I was also, personally affected by some of the events with George Floyd and the social inequities that came to the forefront that all eyes were on. So I was thinking of a way to amplify and celebrate some of the NHL players who played the game that not many people may have known about. And sometimes people would say it's predominantly white sport. But if you look back in time and looked at players who played at least one game, and sometimes 20 games, sometimes a season, my research led me to uncover there was 100 players, current and former, that played in NHL. So it was true that I had a card collection. I had, Mike Marsden, Bill Riley, Tony McKegney growing up. These are some of the guys in the 70s. I went on eBay and I first finished off my card collection that had Wayne Gretzky. Then when that was done, I started to buy Grant Fuhr, who was a well-known NHL player, and other notable players. And that led me to, like Jerome McGinley. I got Jerome McGinley's card. And so that kind of just, I was just kind of getting inspired by seeing the cards and the access I had to the cards. And I assembled over a year or so. I had all the cards. I had a display case. The NHL.com color of hockey writer wrote a story about me, and it got published on the Twitter and website for the NHL. So there's a lot of positive exposure, and I think some good awareness that came out of the card collection, just to maybe open up some conversations about representation and give young people the opportunity to see themselves reflected. So right now that card collection is being shown in the NHL Black Hockey History Tour. It's going across the majority of NHL hockey cities. So we were talking earlier about some of the cities it's been in. It's been in Minnesota when there was an outdoor game there. Columbus, it's been Washington, New York. It currently was just in Las Vegas for the All-Star game. And now I think the next stop will be, where's the next stop? I don't know where it is, but it's somewhere close by.
That's amazing. I can only imagine that the history behind all those cards and what you've learned over the time of accumulating all those players. And hopefully that collection makes its way to the Hockey Hall of Fame, because that's where it belongs at the end of the day. Something like that is definitely an amazing achievement, an accomplishment. There's probably more work to be done because there's hopefully more to be uncovered, but it's nice to have that starting point.
That's right.
Has anyone reached out to you, any of the former players or anybody saying, hey, like, thank you for digging me out because nobody knew about me or nobody knew I exist?
Yeah. A few have. There is one player I talked to on the phone, Bernie Saunders, not Sanders, but Bernie Saunders was a player who played for Quebec Nordiques in the, I'd say it was the early 80s. And actually, his brother is John Saunders, the late John Saunders, who was a ESPN sportscaster.
Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah, both brothers played at College of Michigan. The name escapes me at the moment. And then Bernie went on to play NHL for Quebec Nordiques. And he had really good statistics and ended up going from there to play in Kalamazoo, and then became very successful as a pharmaceutical representative. I got connected with him through the NHL color of hockey writer, who said that Bernie was really pleased and supportive of the work that I was doing. Bernie was one of the people who did not have a hockey card, but he had a card that was made over the years. So he mailed me his hockey card. And some people may also be aware he has a book out right now that's really, really good book. Really interesting book about his experiences playing hockey as a young person in the Professional Hockey League. So he was one person. There's a few other players I connected with a few conversations, being supportive about what was being done, and some I haven't heard from yet. But generally speaking, everyone has been very supportive.
That's amazing. Congratulations on those relationships you're building and what you're doing. It's an amazing accomplishment. A couple more questions before we get you out of here. Just circling back to Waterloo, how's your overall engagement now as an alumni? Are you staying connected? You follow what's going on with the hockey team and participating in some alumni events?
Yeah, I had an interest in following all the sports when I was a student there. And I think there was a bit of a bond between different athletes of different sports teams. So, I've followed, the football team and their ups and downs over the years as well. And the hockey team, the coach does a great job of keeping the former players connected. I went to alumni event Brian Bork put on last summer, a golf event. And there's a lot of former players that do a lot of great things for the team. So they're fun to be part of and connected with. And there's still, like I said, a lot of friendships. Some people that are not in sports, they're still connected and following things as well. So I think there's some opportunity there for people that really would like to support Waterloo, either as a participant or a fan or donor or whatever it may be. I think they're all important roles to play.
Sure, sure. Last question before we get you out of here. The Alliance group here at Waterloo, a group of people, students, staff, faculty, coaches, just looking to create some changes within the Waterloo networking community. What advice would you give us how we could make some changes internally to help make Waterloo even better experience for those who are Black, Indigenous, racialized, and increase representation and enhance that sense of belonging at the school?
Yeah, I applaud you for your efforts with what you're doing. I think we all owe the responsibility for making all environments inclusive and accepting. So, well, where your organization does lead the way, I think it's also helpful to extend relationships and expect that everyone on campus, whether you are Black or not, are intentionally trying to provide inclusive spaces for everyone and sense of belonging. So I think if we look ahead 5 years from now, I think it's organizations like yourself leading the way and offering suggestions and recommendations, but we can't do this by ourselves. We need an entire community. And I think that your group definitely will have some benefits for mentoring young students and having them see successful people that have gone to Waterloo and have been graduates. But more broadly, I think where we want to be as a society is we want everyone to kind of step up and make spaces and sense of belonging for everyone.
Agreed wholeheartedly. Well, John, Dean, I don't want to keep you much longer. Really appreciate your time. It was a pleasure meeting and chatting with you. I hope that this is not our last conversation. I'll definitely add you to my contact list as alumni, as a Black male, somebody I can call on for advice, for shared experiences, and love to see you back in the Black and Gold supporting all of our athletic teams, and looking forward to getting to know you better as we move forward.
Thanks, Edrill. Again, congratulations on all the work you're doing, and keep it up.
Appreciate the talk. Have a good night.
You too.